All right, hi everybody. We will go ahead and get started now.
Okay, your best teacher voice, maybe.
Thank you. So we're just gonna go ahead and get started. I'll start with introductions. I'll start with myself. My name is Nina. For some of you, for our new mentors, I am the program manager of PEAK. So I'm your contact person. I'm working with you all on the day-to-day, having on the phone, and working with your scholars. I'm going to go ahead and introduce our facilitators today. We have Craig Dean joining us today. He has served as PEAK's board chair for about 20 years now. Has been on the Holy Trinity board for upwards of 30 years now, and his real job is that he's the principal of the partners. And here we have Tim Bopp. He is Holy Trinity president. He was with Holy Trinity for many years before he became president as a basketball coach, and now has been president for a number of years as well.
It's a prerequisite.
Yeah. All right, so I'll go ahead and turn it over to Craig and Tim to talk a little bit about Holy Trinity and PEAK's partnership, and give you all an idea of the program.
Great, so welcome everybody. I'm really happy that you're here. We've got a mix of both veteran mentors as well as some freshman mentors here. And it looks like we've only got about 50% fall off on a beautiful summer night. If that isn't too bad. So hopefully a couple more folks will be wondering. But I just want to remind you of a couple of things about the importance of the role that you're playing. You know, we're in a world where words are cheap. We hear them all the time. Everybody's talking over everybody else. Actions speak volumes. And you're all either have stepped up or about to step up for one of the most significant things you can do in your life to have an impact on the young people in our PEAK program. And I just want you to know how powerful that is. These students come to us pretty raw in ninth grade. They are at risk on a number of factors, but we've seen something in them. We've seen that there's a spark there. And even though our program focuses on students that are average academically when we show up, it's just, they're not going to get into another program, but we know they need a mentor. They need the opportunity to be in the right kind of environment at Holy Trinity, which has been a long-standing great partner for PEAK because of its ability to handle the students that come in with the diverse backgrounds that our students have. I also want you to just think about, there's probably somebody along the way, somebody said something to you that really made a difference. And you never really had a chance to tell that person, but you remember that advice all the time, right? And it's something you stick with. Each journey is going to be different here, and some of your students will be, full of life and a lot of energy and easy to interact with. Some will be really tough, so you won't think you're getting through. But I can assure you, they hear everything you say. They absorb it, and you'd be shocked at the number of students that don't show much, but come back later and say, thank you for that experience. Thank you for taking that time. And I think it's just puts them on a different path, even if you're not seeing it in all your interactions over time. So lots to be done there. You are a path to something they're not likely to have that experience in your life, from whatever job path you may happen to be on, whatever your career is, whatever your school path has been. And, just getting a little spark and being exposed to those things can make all the difference. So you don't know when that moment will come, but over a 4-year journey, I think the beauty of that is you're not going to be on your game the whole time. You're going to be in a position where, they'll see you at some of your lesser great moments over time, and that's all right too. See your human, see that what can be accomplished by what you're able to share with them the path they will guide. So just a few thoughts and reminders about the importance of what you're doing. We're in this space at Holy Trinity because Peak program and HP found each other back in the late 90s, 25 years ago. We're hitting our 25th year now. And as I said, I think we've found that the HT's ability to deal with their students where they come to us. And some, you know, as they say, all the different personalities, all the different academic levels. I think one of the secret weapons here is, if you remember going to college, the school doesn't draw from just a few feeder schools, it draws from all over the city. It's kind of like going to college where nobody has all their buddies there when you show up. So you kind of have to look around and make friends with people that are there with you. And that's a surprising strength when you're walking into a new organization because everybody's in the same boat. So with that, I want to introduce Tim Bach, who's president of the school and has been around Holy Trinity the whole time the Peak program's been in place.
Thanks, Tim. Good evening, everyone. I want to share Craig's thoughts. Thank you for not only being here tonight, but your commitment to the program. I have been at Holy Trinity a long time. This is my 30th year, and the students always amaze me, and I'm sure they will you as well. But one of the things that I've learned is a successful school always has a strong component of volunteer activity. It's just the way it is, whether it be a booster club or something. But Pete and your involvement as a mentor is more important than any other thing we can do because you have direct contact with the students. And that's what Holy Trinity is all about. We're all here for those students. So the fact that you would volunteer your time to come and help us and be our partner is incredible, important, and very impactful for the students. This year, Peak and Holy Trinity have decided to intensify our relationship, if that is possible. One of the things that over the years that I've learned is communication seems like an easy word. Like, why can't we all talk to each other and get on the same page? Seems so simple, but I'm sure for your business as well as the education business, it's hard to do, even within the school. But when you bring in a whole different organization, but sponsors, mentors, people that are on the board, that makes it really, really complicated. And Holy Trinity has always prided itself on welcoming partnerships, making sure that the communication is there. But even though we've had that emphasis, it's hard to do. Well, starting already this year, a couple months ago, Peak and Holy Trinity are so interconnected that a large piece of that possibility of miscommunication. So how does this happen, and what is important about that? No matter how much we do through any scholarly organization, they're always on the outside, right? So they're trying to get information, right? You mentioned it too. They're trying to get information about the school. So there's layers. There's a mentor, there's a Peak person. You got to find the right person at Holy Trinity. That's complicated. We have decided to eliminate that. So we are eliminating a huge step. So Mina is part of Peak and Holy Trinity. She is sitting and working with all of the important people that she needs to be a success. So she doesn't have to go and find the vice principal or the assistant principal about an issue. The assistant principal and Mina meet and are together all the time. She doesn't have to go out and find the principal about an issue. They have already cemented their meeting schedule. So we are eliminating this step that causes miscommunication and frustration. you can't get the information you need. So we're really excited about the fact that we're taking this step, and this is what we think it means. Quicker detection on students that are struggling. You know how important that is. If you can get it right at the beginning, you can nip it. The ability to form remedial plans to help those students quicker instead of waiting. Mina's going to have all the contacts and the skill set and the people that she needs to do that quicker and more efficiently, which in the end results in better information for you. No longer do you have to sit there and wait. Well, I know Mina's got to talk to the assistant principal and they got to get back to me. That conversation is happening daily. So we're eliminating all of that. So this program, which has been incredible, no doubt the best mentoring program in the city for scholarships, is even going to get better. So we're really excited. We're really excited that you're all here to help us through this. And I really think this is going to be the best year ever for the Peak and Holy Trinity relationship, because not only the people that we have, but the fact that we have eliminated so many of those issues that we can go right to the source of the problem. So if you're having frustration in getting the information, that should not be. And so let us know, and we'll make sure that we can correct it. But again, thank you. I hope that makes more sense than gobbledygook from me. But we are committed, obviously, to every student in the school. And the fact that you are committed makes for a dynamite relationship for those students. So thank you.
Right, and then I just have a couple points that I want to talk with you all about, to kind of hear about what's gonna start this year off and how we're gonna continue this year. Kind of referring to the academics so that you all know kind of what I'm doing on the daily. I'm speaking with academic advisors. Each of your scholars has an academic advisor in their class, and so they're working closely with that person. I'm working closely with the assistant principal, Erin Monahan, who I will post a video. She did a short introduction for you all. That'll be up on band soon, so you all can kind of get a meet and greet with her virtually. And I'm also working with counselors here at Holy Trinity. So we know we're working with students. It's not always about academics, especially with Peak. You're working with them as people. So I'm getting all of that information and, like she said, sharing it with all of you as promptly as needed. Also, the strategic plan for this year is really to increase high quality and high impact education for our mentors. So last year we had a lot of mentor roundtables that had to do with college, had to do with SEL learning. And so we're just going to continue that and hopefully make it really worthwhile for you all. So keep an eye out on that calendar. Please join us for as many of those as you can. And we'll record those and send that out to you all. So if you can't make it to one, you're still getting that information. And if you're like, I don't want to watch that whole thing, Nina, can you just recap it for me? I'm happy to do that as well. So you all have my cell, you guys have my office number. I'm here for you all as much as I'm here for the scholars. This is a big commitment, and I understand the personal, toll that it takes to work with a student. So I'm here to be with you all to really help you as much as you can, be an ear, just like I'm frustrated you to talk about it. That's what I'm here for. And finally, our calendar. The calendar is kind of constantly going to be updated with times for events, and we're just going to be communicating with that with you all as soon as we can. So if you sign up for band, which I'll send out something afterwards that you can get on that app, band is going to be getting updated all the time, so you guys can RSVP there. My communication is going to be mostly through email, but supported by band. So I'm going to constantly be reaching out to email, phone calls once a month. Ideally, I'll be calling you once a month just to check in with you. So that's how you and I will know what's going on, and you can always call me if you have questions. Finally, I just want to make that quick. Anybody have questions about those three things?
Quick academic advisor, so it's one for all their classes.
So there's one academic per class, one academic advisor per class. So the freshmen all have one academic advisor, sophomores all have one. Really what they're doing is constantly every day working with that person. So they'll flag something for me. We have bi-weekly meetings. They'll flag an issue for me, and then I can go ahead and share it with you all or share it with the resources here at Holy Trinity. And so, yes,
And if we see our students struggling in one of their classes, we can reach out or give contact info on the academic advisor and say, hey, he's doing great here and here, but we're having a challenge here, and get some feedback, maybe game plan some ideas. That's a resource we can reach out to.
Yeah, absolutely. So the academic advisors, actually, you all met one, Mr. Gruber that's sitting outside, he's the junior class academic advisor. So for example, if, you know, you don't have a junior, but let's say one of the juniors is struggling, you guys reach out to me and then I'll connect the two of you so that they know kind of who they're talking to. I know all of you and I see your connection to the scholars, but our academic advisors don't as much. So I'll connect you and we can all sit together, or you can sit with them and make a plan for how you think to serve your scholar.
Maybe just one clarifying point.
Yeah.
Mean, is that the academic advisors, they are just for the peak class. So if there's 15 students in the freshman class, it's just for that peak class.
Hey, the counselors are great. They love contact. So if there's somebody that has an interest in the student, especially a peak mentor, reach out to them. Absolutely.
And if you specifically want to talk to the counselor, I'm always happy to connect you all. Holy Trinity's website is also a really great resource to see kind of who they are, get an idea of what they do as well.
Every student is afforded an opportunity to get an ACT or SAT prep here for free.
So that's from freshmen to seniors. Yeah, so if, you know, sooner the better, but if one of your sophomore students kind of wants to start now, they can always sign up. So I'll go ahead and introduce everyone here. So we'll start with John Malloy. John Malloy was at Holy Trinity for 15 years. 16 years.
Not that it's counting.
And it quickly moved to be sorry, I wrote it down, but you're now at Big Shoulders, correct?
Yeah, Big Shoulders, another scholarship organization that supports students at Holy Trinity and other Catholic schools.
Yeah. He worked with Jerry Silva, who was a scholar, went on to become a mentor, and is now a member of our board. So his scholar has really inspired him to stick around with us. So thank you, John. And then we have Samantha Wright. Samantha is a current senior, her scholar is a senior right now. And we have Adam Wittig, who has a scholar who recently graduated last year, 2021, and is now a freshman, starting over with us with a freshman scholar. So they'll have a lot of experience. They're going to be answering our question first, but this is a discussion. So I want to bring that up there. I'm going to pass it over to Craig.
So John, why don't we start with you? You did have a student who really seemed to be inspired by the mentoring, and to the point that he eventually, once he graduated from school, went to college, he came back and was a mentor for a peak scholar, and also just joined the board, as Mina said. What do you think, what was going on there that kind of instilled in Jerry that desire to give back and stick with the program after it was done?
I think he, you know, had a good foundation from his family to start with, so I can't take much of the credit, but he, I would say, was a little skeptical of the relationship in the beginning. You know, he already had older brothers, he had a father, and he wasn't sure exactly, you know, what I had to offer, but I think he came to realize that I was just there for him, and I was there because I wanted to be. You know, there was no family obligation. I wasn't, you know, hanging out with his brothers and or other students in this way. I was there for him, and I was a resource for him. And I think over time, you know, he came to appreciate it. It did take some time in terms of him developing trust and kind of opening up. It didn't happen in the first year, but as our relationship grew and as it stayed, you know, beyond high school graduation and college graduation and post-grad, I think he saw the value in having not just a four-year mentor, but a lifelong relationship with someone from a different background than him. And I think he felt empowered that he could do that probably better than I did. And he had a lot of confidence that there was value in a mentoring relationship, and he could use his experience as a peak student and a mentee to benefit the next generation. And then I really just placed an emphasis on being present. You know, it worked out that he was on a lot of sports teams at Holy Trinity. And I found value in just being there for him, even if there was no communication or word exchange. The way it worked out with his baseball team, I would go to a lot of games, and the coach had this habit of kind of debriefing the team post-game in center field for a long time, like walking through the game of what went well, what went wrong, revisiting specific innings. So oftentimes I would go to his games, and I couldn't hang around for this post-team meeting long enough to have a break and have me be able to talk to him about the game, you know, say congratulations or whatever. So oftentimes the extent of our exchange would just be him seeing me in the stands at games. And I think that earned me credibility with him, appreciation, like I said earlier, that I was there for him, and that he could count on me.
Okay, Samantha, you have done some of the, I think, some of the most creative and unique things in terms of developing a relationship with your scholars, especially as we've been through some interesting times here during COVID and so forth. But maybe you just share with the group some of the things that also you were able to do that were unique and but help on with your students.
One thing I think I really want to highlight that I think is especially helpful from the program, and seeing that Nina is a resource and others, but her freshman year, she wasn't really responsive to me, and I tried to call and text and email and everything. And Anthony at the time, who was the program manager, I had given him that feedback and reached out, and he talked with her, and still wasn't making much traction. So he actually called a meeting together with the three of us, Anthony, my scholar, and we had sort of a conversation about what peak is, what it means to be a commitment. It's much more than the scholarship. It's also the mentorship. So I think that was definitely kind of a turning point in our relationship, and he's really grateful for Peak's help in facilitating that and helping convey that, because I think she was hesitant, I think as many scholars are, just building that relationship. So that was really helpful, and I think it's really nice to have the program support to do that and to help with that. Something we did that I think really helped as well, especially because during COVID she wasn't going out. She had siblings at home who were doing remote work, so she had to do remote work as well, so she could help a younger sibling with their schoolwork. We did set up a weekly call, which sounds small, but it was helpful to stay in contact regularly, even if it's just 5 minutes. Perhaps she didn't have much to say. So I think that that was really helpful to set that up for a period of time, talking every single week over the phone. There's of course text messages in between, but you get a little bit more out of a student when you make them get on the phone and talk to you a little bit. So that was really helpful. Just I think just the regular communication, finding ways to communicate with your scholar specifically in the situation.
Yeah, it seems like that speaks to a couple of things. One is consistency. I think, you know, a lot of these students have not had consistent adults in their lives, or at least the whole family. A lot of promises. My wife mentored a student who, you know, dad was making promises all the time, never showing up, you know, that sort of thing. Just having somebody there on a regular basis, routinely, it speaks volumes. You know, most of us probably have that consistency in our lives, but our students, a lot of them don't. And then if you're not getting through your student, can't underscore enough, use Minha as a resource. We want to get on that. We want the, you know, students have, or scholars have a responsibility to do their part with their mentor, but they're young, they're learning, they're teenagers, so sometimes they need that prompt. So great points. So Adam, you jumped into the middle I think the mentor had moved away or something, so. But you're obviously, busy, you've got a career, you've got a family, you've got a lot going on. How do you fit in mentoring
Yeah, good
and all
question.
that?
I also I live in Green, so I'm far away.
It was a setup, I didn't know.
Yeah, I think that what I would offer is be willing to experiment. Be willing to just try some things and see if they work, right? Like there were times when we tried texting and it just didn't really have a lot of energy and we would respond. So then I tried something else and we would set up regular Zoom sessions so that we can see each other and talk. And that worked for a while, and then we tried regular face-to-face sessions. I would drive out to the city and we would just go eat somewhere and not really have an agenda, but just connect and eat. And it was, I don't know, it was like a science project, right? What's working and what's not working, and be willing to experiment and try new things, and maybe just be willing to not take it too personally if something doesn't work. They're kids, and they may not respond to you sometimes, and it's not because they don't like you or they don't find any value in it. It's just the thing that isn't working right now. So just be willing to try some things and see what works for you. And also maybe be willing to just be there. What's the quote? 90% of success is just showing up. Showing up to their games, taking them out to eat when you don't have an agenda, or if there are peak sessions where it's a mentor phase, be willing to be there. Just be willing to try to be as present as possible. And I found that it works just to thaw the ice enough to help us get into a rhythm that worked for the both of us that we could capitalize on.
Let me ask one other question of each of you before we open it up to the group. So just talk about, was there a moment in the development of your relationship where you could feel that change? And what was that? And how did it change? Samantha, yes.
Sure. Yeah, I think I mentioned that conversation with Anthony was really helpful in terms of just, I think, changing the dynamic of how we get the relationship. But I also think at the point we set up those weekly phone calls really changed because it was, I guess maybe the repetition, the commitment to say, oh, and like if she missed my call, I'd text her and say, hey, you need to set up a different time. Like, let's talk again. And I would like let her off the hook. So I think just setting up that regular cadence, and it helps you learn a lot more that way, just through regular communication. So I think through that, finding a way to communicate, I think you're right, you have to try different approaches, and different approaches may work at different times. So, but just keeping up with it and the consistency. So I think once we set up that regular cadence, that helps.
Yeah, I don't know about your experience.
I think that so my scholar had a conversation with me about whether he wanted to go to college or not. And it was one that he was really struggling to have with his parents. And it showed me how valuable it was for us to just try to be as vulnerable with each other as possible. And sometimes it's difficult for us to find ways to be vulnerable for young people. But I think if I hadn't tried to do that, and really get uncomfortable and be vulnerable, I don't know that he would have ever had that conversation. And I think that's the kind of power that we have, is to be in the room, to have that sort of discussion with them, to help guide them, even if they're just making the decision themselves. They may not have anybody else that they could talk to if they can't go to their parents. So that was a real turning point moment for me that showed me both the power of mentorship, but also that we have made real progress in the relationship.
Sense. How about you, John?
So I actually mentored 2 students, 4 years with one, and then signed up again for another 4 years. So I wouldn't say there was specific moments, but I did notice a big change as they entered their sophomore year. It was kind of like, I would say somewhat superficial during the freshman year. We would go to the peak events. I would go to their games, but there wasn't a lot of deep conversation. But I found once we started up again sophomore year, it was kind of like, oh, you're still here. And they realized, I think, or started to sink in that this guy's not going anywhere. I might as well give it a chance. We got another 3 years together. So it was, I think one of the strengths of the peak program is that it was 4 years. It's a long-term relationship and it takes time. Teenagers, I think, are inherently skeptical, maybe a little cynical. So I would say don't take it personally if in the first year, there's not a lot that you're getting back from the student. It's just each opportunity you have to spend time, you're kind of breaking down that wall. And keep in mind that, you know, if you're getting frustrated, we've got 4 years to make an impact. And each year, say it gets more meaningful.
You know, a couple of just related opportunities. So we do, I know this is in the information, but at least for scholar mentor events during the year, they're designed to try and create some time for the scholar and the mentor to interact. That's a big part of the purpose of them. And so, you know, life happens, you have a wedding some weekend away or whatever, but if you can make those, it makes a big difference. If they're not the scholar captain, and if they're mentors there, you know, that makes a big difference to them too. So it's a nice time to make one of those commitment statements for them over the course of the year. If you have the ability to do that, it makes a big difference.
If I can step in really quickly on our first one this year is going to be on October 15th. And we're going to do the architectural boat tour. So that we try to make them fun, a little bit educational, but that's really your time to like see them interact with their friends, start getting in with the crowd. That also is helpful for building connection.
So why don't we, you know, lots of expertise and experience around this room, and just on the panel. Love to hear from either questions that you have for the panel, or, you know, even your own experiences that you might want to share with the group. And Kevin is going to be a freshman mentor here, but he's mentored college kids for a while, right? So maybe some perspectives from that too.
Yeah, I think you guys talked about is really important, just that patience part of it, just understanding you're a resource and there for them, meeting them when they are, and helping guidance for it, something like that. You know, college kids are a little bit of a different animal. There's just different static things we can do on a day-to-day workloads, pressure of I talk is kind of real almost to a point with it. But again, I think where I got the most out of the relationship was really that giving back portion of understanding how I felt when I was in their shoes and some of the resources that I didn't have allocated to me. So when I got to that point that I was in a position to give back and just be that voice of reason, sometimes I just need someone to talk to, but also just our experiences on a day-to-day that shape all of us, whether it's in our personal life or in our professional life. I think just the giving back portion of it, the philanthropy part of it is really important. And hopefully it doesn't take 30 years like it did, but I do think it's really important. Also, thanks, you know, this mindset happened right after the pandemic, where I stepped in. There are a lot of challenges and things that came from that that presented themselves in a lot of like social cues that were a lot different prior to. So you can prepare yourself for that if you haven't thought about that. But I really enjoy it. I would enjoy it.
Thanks. Thank you. That's great. How about some questions for our panel or thoughts?
Question about interaction with the scholar parents. How much is there or not?
Great question. So I'll answer because I think I didn't do it the way I would have done it now that I have the experience that I have. I stepped in with a student sort of midstream, so we had a mentor that I would lead. And I also had parents that were Spanish speakers, and I'm not a Spanish speaker, and I don't think I made enough of an effort to make a genuine connection with these parents. So one of the things that I wish I had done better. I think there's a lot of opportunity to connect with them, either in formal ways when we show up to the same events, but also when I picked my mentee up for lunch, his mom was there and his dad was there. And I wish that I had spent a little more time really building the foundation with them so that we can have direct conversations. I still think we had a great relationship, and he passed notes between us because I don't speak Spanish. So I would write notes and I would pass them and we would pass them back. But I wouldn't discount the value of really spending time to get to know the parents and building some trust with them as well. Because it also just allows them to trust you, say yes, you show up to bring them out to Applebee's to have a quick conversation and some lunch.
Yeah, I would say, that's something too, I think even like going in the senior year, I think, what are things I can really do to make the last year meaningful? I think connecting with her parents a little bit better is something I like to do. They're also Spanish speaking, I don't speak Spanish, there's a legal language barrier there. I think one thing I was lucky with is that at the, sort of the freshman, the night to night, the pairing night, her mom was there, so I did get to meet her there early on, and we exchanged phone numbers. So I think if parents are there and you're able, to exchange phone numbers there, it's another opportunity may not present itself very soon. So small things I've done is after any event or time I've spent with her, I would send a photo to her mom and say, just thank you so much for the time. Like it was so great to spend time with her today. We had a lot of fun. So any small things like that I've tried to do. She doesn't know what she'll send me back emojis and stuff, like not a ton, but I think small things like that I wanted her, especially early on, to feel like she could trust me and that I was really looking out for her daughter. So, and I think some even small things like her dad would come and pick her up from an event and I would like, she's trying to walk away and I'm like, oh, I'm going to follow you and I'm going to say hi to your dad. And so just small things like that to where you can touch, make some connections.
I think also, in my case, Pete did a good job of explaining to the parents what the role of the mentor was going to be, that I was not there to replace them or to, put different ideas than what they would want for their child into his head. So that provided a baseline, additional strength to work from. But, there's definitely value in building a rapport with the parents and reassuring them that you're trustworthy and going to be a positive influence on their child's life. For my first mentee, I was, younger and not married, but with my second mentee, I was married and starting to have children, and there was a lot of value in introducing his parents to my family and kind of family to family, building some connections and background.
There's a little bit of balance there in terms of, you are the mentor for the scout. You're not the mentor for the family. So you want to do, I like those things like going out of your way to, walk your scholars in the car and make sure you said hello to the dad. But they shouldn't be coming to lunch with you early on, that sort of thing, that you're trying to build rapport with your mentor or with your scholar rather. I think it's important to kind of keep that in balance so that the scholar builds trust in you. You're not just reporting back to the parents everything that the scholar shares.
You just mentioned a couple interesting things that sparked for me. The first of kind of two questions is one, you mentioned your introduction to your family. Is it beneficial to bring, or do you do that? Is it recommended to do so often? And then the other is around the activities. I think you've all mentioned going out to lunch. Are there activities that are more beneficial than others that you've ever found work for the solid?
Remember at least one event where families were invited. It was like a Foods of All Nation week event. Where mentors could bring somebody. So I think for certain peak events that are maybe lower dollar cost than like the architectural book, where there may be opportunities to piggyback on that, have your spouse come with you. But I would say, to Craig's point, the primary relationship is to the student, and to the extent that you're at a baseball game or a basketball game, you see them in the stands, you can go talk to them and make that connection. That's ideal. But I think the parents, even celebrations, like an award ceremony at Holy Trinity or an honors night or graduation, roving, there's other times where it's a broader forum and there's opportunities for you both to celebrate the student.
My scholar is a sophomore this year, so last year actually took her to work with me one day. And she had a chance to sit in on the executive team meeting in our board, and spend some time with our president. And then that day I just happened to be on a panel discussion about women in the workforce, with women leaders in our company. And she had a chance to sit and observe that. So consider doing things like that as well. She really got a lot out of that, spending that day at the office.
That's a cool idea. I think also just get curious about them. Ask them questions and find out what they're into, and you may find they're into things like soccer. Chicago has some minor league soccer teams. You go watch soccer together. And then when you're sitting to watch soccer together, I don't remember how long the soccer match is, but you got a couple hours where then you can start some conversation and get a little more curious. My scholar was interested in investing. So once I knew that, I thought, well, how are some ways that I can incorporate that into the relationship? So we've got some things to bond over. Just be willing to get curious about them and see what it gives you.
Yeah, I think you'll be surprised as you get to know them. I'm always surprised how many of our scholars have not been to the lake shore here. And, you know, just go hang out on the lake shore, right? I love the idea about going to work, and doing a day at work. It's fantastic. But it doesn't need to be fancy, and you don't want it to be, I'm uncle or aunt big bucks doing stuff for them, right? That's not the purpose of the relationship. So I think those simple things are very powerful. You can spend time.
My scholars are a senior, but I didn't, in like your situation, I came in as he was entering senior year, and so someone had moved. And I'm still, what's great that I'm hearing, I'm struggling with him from, he's a great kid, he's doing really well. The communication is a struggle. So I actually appreciate, I kind of got to think, well, it's really we've only had 1 year, stuff like I said. He was a freshman, you may not really get to know the kid or really get that relationship going until they're even a senior. So I appreciate that from my perspective. From what I can tell about them, like when we do talk, it's like they're kids. He won't want to talk about, school or whatever. We start talking about basketball, and doesn't shut up. I'm like, well, that's what we'll talk about. That's fine, and I think that was, like, it's a step to, it doesn't have to be everything like where you going to college, it can just be, let's figure out the thing they like and just, which is not easy, obviously, but I was like, we can talk about the NBA draft for a half hour if you want, and that's our call. I'm like, I'm not like trying to shoot for, let's figure out what scholarship is out there. Yeah, there are things you'll get to that, but I was just like, that's where conversation is. That's great, which is cool with me, like, because I'm interested in it too, so I think kind of, remembering that these are high school kids that, even though you may have, or at least I kind of came into it like, all right, these big picture thoughts, like the very simple things go a long way for them, and they go a long way by the time I'm guessing they're seniors, they're way more willing to talk about maybe more important things. So the simple conversation, that's where me and my guy are at, and we'll see what happens. But I always know, like, if I say, hey, did you see the game last night? That's 15 minutes right there. which I don't think is, I'm like, that's great, that's fine, we'll go with that.
It is the '1 conversation amongst boys in the school, NBA. Generally.
Yeah.
Just mention that you got it going.
You sent out the calendar for the year, and I always, every year, as soon as you send it, like, put the dates in my calendar, because it's true, like, if you can make the outings for sure, but even it's helpful, like, the final schedules on there, so I'll text her and say, good luck on your finals, just knowing that's coming up is really helpful, or knowing when their classes start after break. So I've always found, like, the calendar that's in advance is helpful.
And as a general rule of thumb, anywhere where parents are invited, that's like an open event. Mentors are always welcome to join as well. So parent teacher conferences, career days, Steve will be joining us for career day coming up on the 28th of September, from 8 to 9 a.m. But you guys are always welcome to join those. And I try to share out as soon as I am aware of when they're going on, let you all know, so you can get on my calendars too.
I love the idea of a closer connection with the academic advisor. I saw my student last year, had some things some class he was doing great, but there's always one or two that he couldn't seem to. And it was interesting because we went to the parent teacher conferences and I met that teacher, I could kind of see their styles not crossing real well. But then being able to have access to a resource that I can say, hey, I talked to my student, having some challenges here, any thoughts, any ideas of resources, because it's not really something that comes from their parents. They're not necessarily involved in that way. I just like that idea, that closer coupling, and I tried to watch that, what would be opportunities to help or find him some help. And so I think getting a closer connection with the academic advisor is a great idea.
You know, they've done some work this summer in identifying students generally in the pattern and where they're weakest, so that they're watching that very closely as they start the year. So it's Mina, it's the assistant principal, should be already ahead of the game, waiting for any sign that, you know, like if a lot of our students believe that they cannot do math. It's a thing, right? They come in saying, I can do everything, but I can't do math. Well, so if it's, you know, something where they've proven that they give up or they don't have it, we have already targeted that to watch closely, so that if their performance isn't there, they're not handing in their homework, they're jumping on it right away. So it's the academic advisor, it's Mina, and it's the assistant principal. So it's a different view of things, and it's an aggressive view for us, which I like.
I love the idea of being proactive going into the year, knowing he had some challenges here. What's the schedule looking like? What do you guys see? Because sometimes they'll have ideas for me, you know, we gotta make sure he stays on top of this, and I can help do that if I have that connection. So I love that idea of getting a closer dialogue with.
Just a reminder about, you know, what we're about. We always, so that there's not pressure on you as the mentors. The students we take, you know, our objective at peak is to get them to high school graduation. Most of them exceed our expectations for them and go on to college. Not always 4 straight years, but and you'll hear the statistics since 2006. Every Holy Trinity student has been accepted in college. But that's not the right thing for every student that we have. You know, some are going to trade school or getting into the workforce, or we have one student last year, he's like doing real estate development and he's a barber. And he that makes money as a barber in the short run, but he's out, then that's him. He's not going to succeed in college. So I think part of the art here is also providing the guidance that gets them on the path that's going to be successful for them after they graduate from Holy Trinity or the Peak program. And just wanted to remind everybody of that. It isn't college for every scholar, and it shouldn't be. Doesn't happen.